My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins and the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. My Mother Immaculate, my Mother Immaculate, truly, Jesus, we say these words because you gave your mother, Mary, to us upon the Holy Cross in order that she might truly be our mother. And this is the feast that we celebrate her Immaculate Heart. We're grateful for your Sacred Heart, Jesus, that beats for love for us. But today we have the sweetness of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And Jesus, I want to think that in this time of prayer, it's like we're presenting your Blessed Mother with a beautiful bouquet of flowers. And we know that this gives you great pleasure too, Lord, to see your mother honored by our prayer, honored by our conduct, honored by our joys and our hopes that we place into her heart today. Now, St. Luke tells us something very important and very beautiful about the heart of your mother. Whenever we read the Gospel, that recounts the moment whenever Mary and Joseph found you in the temple, teaching amongst the scholars and the doctors of the law. And even though there was a hurt in their own heart because they couldn't find you and they didn't understand, whenever you explained something of the mystery to them, Luke tells us that Mary treasured these things and pondered them in her heart. And it's to that heart of treasure that we're making recourse today. It's to Mary's treasure trove of a heart that we're bringing our flowers, bringing our prayer, and asking that our intentions, that all those things that are deep in our own hearts at this time might be placed within her heart that treasured and pondered all of these things. Now, when I was a child, I had a treasure box, I'm sure like a lot of other people. A little place where you accumulate all the things that as a child you hold to be of great value and importance. Of course, looking back now, these things were kind of trivial, little trinkets. But for me, they really were treasures. And so whenever I had something that was kind of important to me, I would take it and put it in the little box. And over time, the little box became too small because my treasures were growing and growing, and so I needed a second box in order to put my treasures into. But 2 boxes was probably enough. And whenever you begin to accumulate a little bit of treasure, then you begin to realize what really is treasure and what isn't. Maybe it's also the benefit and the experience of a little bit of age and maturity that you say, well, maybe this little thing isn't so important to me after all. But sometimes the treasures from our past, maybe a little teddy bear or a little trinket that belonged to my grandparents, they stayed very much part of the treasure box. But we do select things that over time that have more value and more importance to us. And when we put them into our treasure box, then we want to keep them and hold on to them. Now, whenever Luke tells us that Mary treasured all of these things and pondered them in her heart, well, what were those things that she put into her treasure box, which is her heart, her Immaculate Heart? We think of the treasure that's in the heart of your mother, Jesus, a moment of the Annunciation, whenever the angel Gabriel came and spoke to her for the very first time and revealed something of the hidden mysteries of God to her, greeting her by her name and asking her with great dignity, with great elegance, to be your mother. And all her fears and all of her hopes that were bound up into that moment remained deep within her heart. We think of the visitation, how immediately she went to help Elizabeth, her cousin, whenever she was in need. And all of the things that she must have continued to ponder and treasure in her heart from that moment that the angel Gabriel spoke to her. But also how in that moment of that journey that she makes to her cousin Elizabeth, her heart was beating with blood and beating with love that was feeding and nourishing your own body deep within her. We think this moment of the finding of the temple, whenever we really hear something about her heart, something that perhaps she didn't understand completely and totally, but that she trusted in your mercy. And she trusted that God's plan was bigger than the things that she possibly even knew herself. And so it became another little treasure, even though perhaps we might have looked at it with human eyes to think this was a kind of a moment of difficulty. But no, for Mary it became a treasure to see something new about you, Jesus. And maybe we can take a little bit of solace from that if at times we're struggling to understand something of your plan for our lives, Jesus. Well, we see that Mary treasured these things. And so even in our own little moments of not understanding or maybe not loving as much as we could, we take it as a moment in which we realize that your plan is bigger and that has a place in our heart too. We think of the feast of Cana, whenever she went to Jesus and said, they have no wine. And said, now do something, help this bride and groom, save them from their embarrassment. In the same way that you redeem us and save us with a cup of wine, you redeem us and save us, Jesus, with the cup that becomes your blood at the Mass. And this treasure in her heart was a moment that she knew you could do it. She knew that you had the power to change things. And so this is another treasure in her heart. And the trust that she had in you, the trust that she was able to pour into the hearts of those other waiters and servers in order that they too would trust in you. Well, where does that come if not from the heart of a mother? A heart that is filled with these wonderful treasures. And all the major feasts that she celebrated with you, Jesus. The feasts of families, birthdays, but also the big religious feasts as well. Thinking about the lights and the joys and the food, all of those little moments that our own earthly mothers treasure so much. How much more Mary, spending time with you and St. Joseph and all the family and all those people gathered around. But not just family members, also those that came to be healed, those who sought your counsel, those who sought your help, those who sought healing from their families whenever they were in real difficulty, those who were suffering from demons. All of these moments of seeing people coming to you, Mary remembered that. And she treasured that in such a way that whenever we come to her right in this moment, even in this moment of prayer, she's thinking about all of those people, how they came to you, Jesus, for healing, and how we too can be helped. And she loves us with that same love that she brought others to you too. And so this Feast of the Immaculate Heart shows us that we're also finding a place in her heart. Whenever we're queuing up, as it were, to see you, Jesus, queuing up to hear you, trying to find a place in the house in which we can see you, we're also in the heart of Mary. And then how much more so in the Eucharist, that whenever we receive you, Jesus, in Holy Communion, whenever our heart, in a sense, beats in unison with your own heart, sacred heart that is in the Eucharist, mystically, then our hearts are also united to that of Our Lady, whose blood you wear. That as her heart beat in order to nourish you whenever you were deep within her womb, so her heart beats in unison with you whenever she received you in the Eucharist. And as do we. When we receive you, Jesus, in Holy Communion, we are closer even to your mother. So that whenever we really open our hearts to speak to you, to talk to you, and ask that our prayers become her prayers, then how much more does she listen to us with the heart of a mother who treasures all of these things and ponders them in her heart. But it's a heart that knew suffering too, at the crucifixion, at all those moments when people were deriding you and speaking ill of you, how her heart must have suffered. And we know this because of what Simeon said to her, that she too would suffer. Mary, you took all of these things, the joys and the sufferings, and you placed them into your own immaculate heart. And so we're asking that today, whenever we honor you with our prayer, that we too will find a place in that beautiful heart, where you open your heart to us, a heart that you make vulnerable for us, a heart that you allow to be filled with even sorrow and suffering, in order that we can be brought closer to your Son, Jesus. Help us, Mary, in all of the trials and disappointments of life, that we can come closer to you, and you'll bring us to Jesus, your Son. Help us on this feast of your Immaculate Heart, that we can really find a place in your heart, and that as we treasure and ponder all of the things of Jesus, that you will treasure and ponder our prayers, our intentions, and us too. I give you thanks, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations that you have communicated to me during this meditation. I ask your help to put them into effect. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.